We are getting absolutely belted with horror additions to our streaming services, and that is likely because horror fans pay money. Horror fans go out, they vote with their dollars, um, which is fucking great because obviously we want all the horror in the world. Give us more horror. The problem with that is there is so much shit going on that it's hard to keep up. So, what I've decided to do is I'm going to give you 13 of my favorite horror gems that I don't think you've seen yet. And if you have seen them, I don't think there'd be anyone that's seen this that has seen every single film on this list. If you have, let me know, and so I can make you a best friend forever bracelet because these are fucking good ones. Also, if you've seen any of these, chuck them in the comments. Let me know what you thought because they're not the mainstream sort of horror fare. So I'm interested to see what other people think of them. Also, all the info on where to find these films in your country and everything, and the full trailers are going to be linked in the description. So feel free to go have a look if you want. You know, if I didn't sell you enough on these films and you're like, no, go check out the trailer, bro. It's all there for you. I've put it right down in the description, so go get it. My first film recommendation is Hunter x Hunter. Not Hunter x Hunter, not Hunter D. Do not get confused with the anime. Hunter x Hunter is the name of this movie. And this movie slaps like an old tradie on a Dragon Link after an early knockoff on a Friday. Like, I recommend avoiding the trailer for this movie because it gives away too much. And just allow me to arm you with the info you need going into this film. Joe, Anne, and their daughter Renee spend their days living in the Canadian wilderness, living out what I can only imagine is Joe Rogan's wet dream. They are completely cut off from society. They spend their days hunting, trapping, and making stuff with their hands. However, when a clever rogue wolf decides to start messing with Joe's trap lines, he decides that he needs to take it out, and he basically leaves on this hunting trip to try and track this wolf. While he's out there on his hunting trip, he realizes that there are signs of something more dangerous than wolves out there. That's it. That's all you need. I don't want to spoil it anymore. It's a great setup. I have seen online some people call this movie a boring slow burn, and I'll try to say this diplomatically, but like, fuck those people. The entire movie is 80 minutes long, and every single scene and subplot adds another kilogram of gunpowder to the powder keg that is the ending of this movie. This movie has one of the best endings in horror ever. Like, it is one of my favorite horror movie endings ever. And I think about it all the time. When people say, "Oh, what's the best ending?" Because horror sometimes falls flat at the ending. When people ask me what's the best ending for a horror film, this flashes in my mind. This is one of them. It's fucking great. And ironically, this movie about hunting pulls a few bait and switches in terms of plot and characters, which I really liked. Joe is expertly played by Devon Sawa of Final Destination, Idle Hands, and Eminem Stan. He looks unrecognizable as this, and he plays like the ultimate outdoorsy, rugged dad. He just fucking chain smokes through scenes where he's teaching Renee like how to skin, how to hunt, how to trap, how to butcher animals, and how to basically survive in their inhospitable surroundings. And I fucking loved it. He's one of the most capable characters I've ever seen in a horror film, which makes it so much better when he starts to crack under pressure because shit starts going sideways, right? Camille Sullivan, as his wife Anne, is really the star of this, and you can tell so much about her backstory just in her interactions with their daughter Renee. There are only really two gripes I have with this movie. One is there's a few seconds of shitty CGI. This is a micro-budget film. I don't give a fuck. It didn't take away it at all. And two, there is an entire subplot of this film that is basically, you don't see it. It happens off camera, and I would have loved to have seen it. So really, my main takeaway, my main gripe with this film is that it's not longer. This movie is fucking awesome. It's part Ghost in the Darkness. It's part The Revenant. It's all killer, no filler. If you can get your hands on this movie, once again, in the description, where to stream this movie is in the description. Get your hands on it because it is fucking amazing. Second movie is Sean Burns' The Devil's Candy. And holy hell, pun fully intended, this movie is heavy. It's emotionally heavy, it's atmospherically heavy, and the soundtrack is heavy as a lead brick. Like, this movie is about a struggling family of three who move into the house they happen to get for a bargain. Wonder why. After finding out that two of the last three occupants died there. The father is a painter, played by Ethan Embry, who for some unexplained reason has the body of Brad Pitt in Fight Club, which I'm cool with. I like that shit. Fuck yeah. Ripped dad, let's go. However, he finds out that when he is in the house, he can hear these low murmurs constantly. These murmurs end up leading to him slipping into these painting trances where all time and space seems to disappear, and the end result of his paintings are these brilliant but really deeply disturbing pieces of art. When a previous occupant rocks up to the house, things really, really start to kick up a notch. And this movie's fucking awesome. It's made, like I said, directed by Sean Byrne, who did The Loved Ones, which is one of my favourite movies of all time. I adore The Loved Ones, but I think lots of people have seen it. If you haven't, check it out. Also, sidebar, this shirt is by Little Scorpion Tees. No sponsor or anything. I just really like it. I've never seen a Loved Ones t-shirt, so as soon as I saw it on Instagram, I was like, I need that. Also, some scumbag's trying to rip off her art currently, so fucking go. If you like horror movie shirts, go check it out. She does fucking amazing work. Go buy one. They're sick. I have. Now, this movie has a lot going for it. First of all, the family's cool as shit. Like, young metalhead parents raising a goth teenager who all love and support each other. It's very nice to see in a horror movie. Usually you see there is all this tension between like mum, dad, kid, and it's awful. They kind of all dislike each other, and like whatever spookiness happens usually kicks that up a notch. Not in this one. They all love each other. They all support each other. They're a really cute family. I just love them, which means that you want them to be okay. Like, they're sort of they're parent inspo, to be honest. Like, don't you all want to be loving metalhead parents raising loving goth teens? That sounds fucking sick. I do. That's what I want to be. So I love that. I love all the characters in this movie. The second best thing about this movie is the acting by Pruitt Taylor Vince as Ray, the previous occupant of the house. Every scene he was in, I was just so tense because his behavior and his physically imposing presence, he's so intimidating that the hairs on the back of my neck stood up just at the side of him. Even when he's being nice, and I haven't felt that since Javier Bardem in No Country for Old Men. Like, this guy is a fucking iconic, to me at least, is an iconic horror villain, just like Lola was in The Loved Ones, and I don't think they get the respect they deserve, so you should check it out just for that. The last major selling point of this movie is the fucking soundtrack. If you are into heavy metal or punk, this might be your new favourite movie soundtrack. Like, bands like Pantera, Slayer, The Cavalera Conspiracy, Spiderbait, they all make appearances, and they're used to maximum effect. It's awesome. The last 20 minutes of this movie is this angry, violent, loud crescendo. And I fucking loved it. I love the ending. Once again, I think horror is elevated when they nail the ending. I think endings are usually the weakest part of horror films. Not in this one. Word of warning, however. This movie will likely be a tough watch for parents. Like, it made me want to hug my kid after. I think it'll do it to you. Even if you do not have kids, it'll make you want to hold them tighter. That's what good horror does. If you are a fan of like disturbing artist stories, like Lovecraft's Pickman's Model, fucking go into this one. It's awesome. It's so good. God, I love it. I am so excited for Sean Byrne's new movie, especially this shark film. Oh, big fan. Big fan. Now, the next movie I'm going to recommend is definitely going to be divisive, but it is such an interesting and wacky film that I can't resist telling people about it because I love it. Even though it fills a very small niche in the horror genre. It's called One Cut of the Dead. It's a Japanese film, and it's a comedy horror that is basically the love child of Shaun of the Dead, Heart of Darkness, and a cheesy Japanese soap opera. You can probably tell from that random blend of films that there's a lot of moving parts to this movie. Without giving too much away, the premise in a nutshell is that a hardworking but mediocre ad director has been tasked with filming a D-grade zombie flick. But things take an interesting turn when the set is overrun by actual zombies. Chaos ensues. It's fucking hilariously funny. It's quotable. Pom! Is one of the things that me and my missus say to each other all the time. As this movie reveals its twists and turns, they just hit you out of left field. I don't think anyone can call what this movie was going to be before they watch it. And writer-director Shinichiro Ueda he's a goddamn genius for this film. This is genius level writing and filmmaking. When the credits start to roll, I can almost guarantee you'll spend a couple of minutes trying to work out, like, could I tell what they were doing? Were there hints? Was this? At least it was for me. From where the movie starts to where the movie ends, I feel like I watched 3 separate films, and that's in a 90-minute runtime. Like, that is amazing. And a word of warning with this film, however, is that you're probably going to want to turn this off 20 to 30 minutes in, going like, why the fuck did he recommend this to me? What a dummy. This is not a good film. Please, please, please stick through. Please stick through this film. Every single shot, every single look aesthetically in this film is meant to look exactly how it does. This is a card house of a film. If you're looking for something a little left field that is light on the horror, heavy on the comedy, and you don't mind subtitles, please watch One Cut of the Dead. It is one of the weirdest, and I mean that as the highest compliment of all time. It is one of the weirdest, in a good way, films I have ever seen. And when it was done, I was so glad I watched it. I watched it with my girlfriend. She ended up like jumping in, going like, "What? I need to watch what this is. What the fuck is this?" It is the definition of a cinematic gem. Please see One Cut of the Dead. It's so good. Revenge is France's answer to I Spit on Your Grave. And I don't mean that to be derivative. I actually like this way better than I liked I Spit on Your Grave. It is, like I Spit on Your Grave though, it is a hard watch for much of it. But there is enough style and execution that it never feels too exploitive. Instead, I think it's a fantastic example of female vengeance, which is, I mean, it's sorely needed. It's sorely needed. We love cinematic female vengeance. Let's fucking go. If the subject matter doesn't deter you, what you will find is one of the most brutal, tense, and gory examples of revenge films I have seen in horror ever. Like, I Saw the Devil, once again, is up there. This is up there with it. It's so good. The premise is a woman named Jen is on a secret getaway with her already married boyfriend, Richard. Scandalous. Richard and his friends use a luxurious mansion in the remote part of the desert for their yearly hunting trips. When 2 of Richard's hunting buddies rock up a day early and catch Jen and Richard in the act, the situation for Jen shifts from awkward to dangerous really quickly. The way some of the scenes in this movie are shot gave me goosebumps and phantom limb sensations that I haven't felt since the early Saw flicks. This film dances right on the border of slipping into, like, I guess you could probably call it torture porn, but every time it gets too close, a, like, Predator-style action sequence, hide and seek, happens, and then it pushes it back sort of into the action horror genre. And the film drifts seamlessly between English and French because some characters are American, some are French. But in general, it's pretty bare bones when it comes to dialogue, which works for it really well. The villains in this film are absolute creeps. Like, they're absolute slugs of humans. And you spend the whole movie hoping for their comeuppance, which is it's exactly what you want to feel in these films. I will also say, the final scene in this film, the final showdown, it is one of the most iconic in horror films ever. It is the perfect blood-soaked ending to the war of attrition that is this film. And it goes up there with Hunter x Hunter for me in terms of ending. Like, I fucking love the ending to this movie. It is so good. It's a bit like the ending of Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the original. Like, it is. It's just mwah, chef's kiss ending. If you do not mind the subject matter of this film, given that it's about sexual violence, and you don't mind sacrificing a bit of like realism just in terms of what one person's body can take, this film should be on your watch list. Put it in. It's a great watch. It is tough, but it's a great watch. It's not particularly scary, but it is just fucking. It is action. Your heart will pump the entire time. I just love it. What a fantastic, fantastic film. I love revenge. I'm an atheist, and I like to think of myself as a man of science. Not many people know this. I'm a microbiologist by trade, or at least I was. I used to work in a lab. That being said, if someone asked me if I'd like to be part of a seance or fuck around with a Ouija board, there is still a hesitation in me. There's still like a slight what if it's real. Liam Gavin's A Dark Song thrives on the what if. A Dark Song is essentially about two people. Grieving mother Sophia, played by Catherine Walker, and pisshead occult specialist Joseph, played by Steve Oram. Sophia has lost a child and wants to use a rite from the Book of Abramelin. Real book. It's a real book used by famous Satanist Aleister Crowley to summon her guardian angel so that she can talk to her deceased child in the afterlife. Joseph informs Sophia that if she does want to perform this ritual, it'll take thousands of dollars in resources and months to complete, in which neither of them are allowed to leave the very isolated house that the ritual takes place on. Sophia agrees, and we're treated to just a super, super solid occult flick. The director, Liam Gavin, doesn't like jump scares, right? He said in interviews that he thinks they let the audience off. You know, you get a quick build-up, sharp bang, noise, whatever, and then that releases the tension. He doesn't like that shit. What he likes to do is slowly build tension constantly all the way through so that you're sitting there, you feel the pressure build as it goes, and then he wants to release it all in a crescendo of scares, and that is what this film does. As far as occult movies go, this can hold hands, stand in a pentagram circle, chanting creepy shit with the best of them. Think The Witch, think The Autopsy of Jane Doe, Rosemary's Baby. Like, this is so good. Like a lot of occult films, you spend a lot of time trying to work out if anything is actually happening or if the character's isolation might be the reason they're seeing this sort of thing. There's a lot of like, is it monster, is it mental? This does that really well. And when I think of occult specialist, I think of like black robed figure, pentagram necklace, chanting Latin over an old book. That's what I think of. Liam Gavin said, jog the fuck onto that, and he made this like occult specialist that wouldn't look out of place in the corner of a pub, slamming Guinness after Guinness and yelling at the rugby on TV. It's awesome. Steve Oram plays this character to great effect. He's this manipulative drill sergeant, fucking neckbeard type in one scene, and then the next scene, he's this really empathetic, caring, motivating, almost like coach figure to Sophia, and it's that push and pull that works really well for this film. Like, you hate him sometimes, and then you're like, oh, he's not that bad, he's still trying to help. That is what sells this film. Catherine Walker as Sophia, just a brilliant character and performance. A lot of female protagonists in horror are sort of like lazy writers tend to give them masculine traits. That's what a lazy writer does. And it's a shame, and I understand why they do it. They have to do it because watchers, the audience, still thinks of, like, we still think of heroes as like 80s male action archetypes, right? So when you see someone like Erin or even Laurie Strode, they're great characters. I love those characters, and I think they're extremely well written. But they're given like Erin's a hunter, survivalist. That is usually a trait you bestow on a man, you know? But they've done that to make this female seem like an action hero, because where the audience can be a little bit dumb with that shit, right? We need a bit of help. Not in this, right? Catherine Walker in this, as Sophia, really highlights what I call maternal strength. She has stoicism. She has mental fortitude. She has the pain endurance that only mothers have, and having from dealing with, a fucking kid's meltdown at 7 in the morning before you've had coffee. She's got a real water off a duck's back, I don't give a fuck attitude. Like, I'm just going to get this done. Yes, everything's collapsing around me, but I am going to talk to my kid. I just need to get this done. Get the fuck out of my way. Whatever I have to do, I'll do it. Just get the fuck out of my way. She pushes through, and it's awesome. It's really good. And it's a trait I see in mothers, mostly, to be honest. You're dragging a kid along, it's screaming, but you're like, I've got to get the shopping done. Like, it's that sort of shit, and it works so well as horror protagonist material. Now, I'm an absolute sucker for a ritual montage, and this is basically 60 minutes of one of those. I love when a film gets into the lore as well, and this really gets into the weeds. Like, this explains a lot about the lore and why and what you need. This movie is scary, but not till like an hour in. So, if you found The Witch boring, probably give this one a miss. But if you're happy to sit through a bit of a tense, creepy build-up for a big, scary crescendo, I highly recommend it. I love A Dark Song. I hope you will too. If you check it out, let me know, because as far as occult horror goes, it's top tier for me. Now, I have seen Kim Ji-woon's 2010 horror action movie I Saw the Devil get mentioned in a few horror lists, but I think the 2.5 hour runtime and the fact that it's a foreign film probably stops people going in. And I get it, it can be pretty daunting. Like, that's a long runtime, it's a lot of time invested, especially if you don't know anything about a movie. This is a sign off from your horror loving friend. Go the fuck in. Go into this movie. Like, I love Korean directors. They often take rules that constrict Western directors about, like, tone, pacing, and plot, and subject matter, and they just chuck it in the bin. Like, they don't give a fuck. And when I saw this for the first time, I was sort of expecting a passable murder mystery serial killer flick, like The Bone Collector or maybe an episode of Mindhunter. And what I got was a fucking masterpiece. I mean it. In every sense of the word, this is a masterpiece. It's a masterpiece of action. It's a masterpiece of horror. It's a masterpiece of revenge. It's a horror masterpiece. For me, it might be the greatest revenge film ever made. And I know for lots of people, that is probably John Wick. I love John Wick. I've seen all the John Wicks. I am such a big John Wick fan. But after seeing this, I realized that Chad and the team were trying to make a more palatable version of I Saw the Devil when they made John Wick. Like, that's how I felt. If revenge is a dish best served cold, John Wick is the Arctic, I Saw the Devil is fucking Pluto. Like, it is hardcore. If you have the stomach for this movie, you should go in knowing very little. Honestly, the following synopsis will do. It's about a serial killer who brutally murders a woman who's broken down on the side of the road. Little does he know that that woman's boyfriend is a higher up in the National Intelligence Service, which is like South Korea's CIA, and he wants revenge. That's it. Don't go in with any more than that, because this movie changes on a dime about 45 minutes in and morphs into a different film, and I would hate for that to be spoiled for you. This movie is one of the most graphic, disturbing, and violent films I've ever seen, and Korean horrors are known for being quite dark and brutal. There are no cutaways in this movie. They show you all the action. You see all the killings, you see all the depravity, all the torture, all the fight scenes, all the crime scenes. You see all of it. And this movie is not a movie. It is an epic. This is not start, middle, end, right? This is start, middle, end, start, middle, end, start, middle, end for 2.5 hours. It sets up the A-plot and just fucking fangs. It's almost entirely set between two characters. The secret agent, Kim. The National Intelligence Service agent, Kim, played by Lee Byung-hun, who was in Squid Game. And the serial killer, Jang, played by Choi Min-sik, who is a fucking Korean horror icon. And I have not seen better chemistry between a protagonist and antagonist since Hannibal Lecter and Clarice in Silence of the Lambs. It shows you who the serial killer is straight away. And then it proceeds with the plot so quickly that you're like, how does this go for 2.5 hours? Like, they're going to run out of runway real quick. And that's when writer Park Hoon-jung says, "Look upon the field where I grow my fucks, and you shall see that it is barren." He does not give a fuck. Like, and then he proceeds to set up situation after situation where you are enthralled, horrified, and then cheering, and then heartbroken. Over and over and over and over again. Honestly, this, Silence of the Lambs, and Seven are the unholy trinity of horror crime for me. And Choi Min-sik as the serial killer should have won an Oscar. It's a fucking crime he didn't win an Oscar for this performance. This is one of the best performances ever. He is violent, he is depraved, he is arrogant, and above all, he is fucking terrifying. And to me, this movie is blood-splattered perfection. If you have seen this movie, please let me know in the comments, because I am dying to talk about this movie with people. I love this movie so damn much. It's one of my favorite of all time. It's definitely in my top 10. I just adore it. See this film. Please see this film. When I was putting this list together, I thought it's going to be tough to recommend a good zombie film that people haven't seen. But call me the fucking Veronicas, because I don't miss. This movie is so good. This movie is so good, guys. When I watched it, I went in knowing absolutely nothing apart from the following short synopsis, which is two ex-baseball players, Mickey and Ben, survive the initial zombie apocalypse and are trying their best to cope with the ever-changing world, when suddenly they hear a mysterious transmission over their walkie-talkies, and they have to decide whether they're better off on their own, or whether they're better off meeting up with some other survivors. Yeah, that didn't jump out to me. That didn't really sell it to me. I was like, I don't really want to watch this after that synopsis. But let me sell this to you. That's what I do. I sell movies to people. Let me sell this to you. This is Clerks with zombies. Yes, it is a zombie film about killing zombies and stuff, but that takes a back seat to a very heartfelt and emotional story about friendship. If you have ever been through a breakup or a tragedy and been blessed, like myself, to have a group of mates rock up, take you to the pub and say shit like, "Don't worry man, there's plenty of fish in the sea," or "God, your mustache looks great. Are your calves looking bigger? Have you been working out?" while you cry into a beer, this movie will hit you like it did myself. Like, this movie is about friendship. The banter is fantastic. The soundtrack fucking rips. There's lots of, like, southern indie rock. And it has a dance scene that comes completely out of nowhere. And it just made me so happy. Not since Beetlejuice has a out-of-the-blue dance scene made me this happy in a horror film. The two main actors, Jeremy Gardner, who plays Ben, and Adam Cronheim, who play Mickey, sell the hell out of this friendship. Ben is like this hilarious but super logical survival machine, and Mickey is this poor emotional soul who is like grieving the loss of his old life. But their friendship is so fun to watch play out. Like, in one scene, Mickey says, "Ben, you're the only person I know that could walk across the country and still put on weight." To which Ben retorts, "Mickey, you're the only person I fucking know now." If that sort of banter, like, floats your boat, and it definitely does mine, please see this film. They made it on a budget of $6,000. $6K. That's it. You be hard-pressed getting a shitty Toyota Corolla for less than $6K. They made a whole fucking film, and it's good on this. It is shot like a hipster rock band travel documentary, which I just love. This movie is a comedy, but make no mistake, it is a horror as well, right? Like a sleeping cat, it will lure you in with its soft, fuzzy, warm underbelly, just enough to get you feeling good, and then after a couple of strokes, it'll hit you with like the teeth and claws, and it'll send you. Like, it is a tense and terse film. So be warned. Even if you're not going to watch this film, right? If I haven't sold you enough on it, that's a shame, because it's fucking awesome. But if you're not going to watch this film, just YouTube the battery dance scene. It is so good. I love it. I love it so much. Hell, it might even convince you to watch the whole movie. Part Letterkenny, part The Walking Dead. This movie, this is one of the funniest zombie movies since Shaun of the Dead. Probably is the funniest zombie movie since Shaun of the Dead. I just adore The Battery. Full disclaimer, I will watch anything Elijah Wood is in. Since Lord of the Rings, Elijah Wood has done his best to star in only films he's interested in. And to my delight, it turns out that Elijah Wood likes really fucking weird genre-bending horror films. He even has a horror production company called Spectrovision, which is very cool. This is no different. The premise of this film is that Wood plays Norval, a privileged hipster DJ who gets a handwritten note from his father, who left him 30 years ago, inviting him to his cabin in Port Hope, which is in backwater Ontario. Norval arrives to find his father is this mean, angry drunk who, despite inviting him to the cabin, seems to want nothing to do with him. And things only get stranger from there as Norval tries to work out what the fuck is going on. This film could be 3 separate films. The first is a family drama filled with awkward and stunted conversations around a dinner table as the 2 characters try to find common ground. The second is this creeping gothic horror. It's probably the best way to describe it. And the final act I won't spoil, but it takes an even stranger turn as all start to be revealed. It's this really weird mix of comedy, horror, and mystery. And if that sounds like your bag, and it definitely is mine, and you have a spare hour and a half to go in on this film. It's so fucking weird. I remember when I was watching this, my missus was like, "What are you watching?" It's so odd. Get your hands on this film if you can. Elijah is as brilliant as he is quirky. It is a slow burn for the first 40 minutes, but because there's a bit to set up. But then it goes from there, and strap yourself in because things get super violent and super weird. Also, if you want to hear Frodo Baggins call something, this is the film that does that. As if you would. That's the only thing that could have made Lord of the Rings better. Lord of the Rings, 12 out of 10 film for me. Frodo Baggins calling probably would have elevated that. If you haven't watched a lot of Indian cinema, you may think that Indian cinema is always really joyful and party atmosphere with lots of musical numbers, and it's always happy and uplifting. And I get that. I was like you once too. But Indian cinema can be really dark, really disturbing, and fucking brutal, especially in their horrors. So let this be your education. If you had told me that Guillermo del Toro had a hand in making this movie, I would 100% believe you. That is how high the cinematography is in this. It is technically at such a high level. It's so good. It's dark, it's creepy, and it's fucking tragic, which is everything I love in my horror films. Tumbad it's one of my favorite folk horrors. It starts in 1918, and we follow the life of Vinayak, who basically through 3 chapters of his life. It's a bit of an epic, to be honest, and it's awesome. It starts in the town of Tumbad, hence the name, and him, his brother, and his mum are basically caretakers for the cursed grandmother of the local lord. Vinayak's mother is also, she's been promised wealth to be the Lord's side piece, and Tumbad has a history of worshipping the darker deities of the Indian pantheon, and as such is said to have been cursed. But it's also said that because the Lord celebrated these deities so much that he's been given immense wealth. He's been given a hidden treasure, if you will, a One Piece. When tragedy strikes Vinayak's family, basically his mum goes, "We're getting the fuck out." But Vinayak hatches a plan to get the grandmother to give up the treasure's whereabouts, and we get to basically watch a 100-minute epic on about how all that glitters is not gold and why greed is bad. And it's so good. Dark fairy tales are right up my alley, and this is darker and more fairy tale-y than most. The director, Rahi Anil Bhav, wrote the first draft for this movie when he was 18. That is a cinema prodigy. God damn, the cinematography and the sound design are both god tier. This movie is by definition a labour of love, and it has criminally been overlooked in Western cinema circles. I'm trying to fix that now. If you want people to see Tumbad, if you've seen Tumbad and you're like, yeah, I agree, Tumbad's an amazing movie, share this fucking review of Tumbad. People need to see this movie. There are a lot of people out there that like folk horror that has no idea it exists, This movie is so goddamn good. The world created by Rahi is it's amazing. It intertwines historically accurate happenings around the time, like World War One or the colonization, the British colonization, and it gives it a real world anchor. And you can't help but draw parallels to The Devil's Backbone or Pan's Labyrinth by Del Toro. And this is up there with them. Honestly, this is better than some of Del Toro's films for me. I love Del Toro. Shoham Shah, who plays adult Vignac, is just fucking outstanding as a man who is so obsessed with wealth that he can't see the forest from the trees. And he's got one of the best cinematic mustaches of all time. I love a mustache. His is top tier. The lore around the various curses and creatures is super interesting, and the tasks that Vignac has to undergo remind me of the labors of Heracles, which I'm a big mythology fan. I love that shit. But like lots of mythology, the subject matter is really dark, okay? There is a lot of child hitting, infidelity, drug use, brothels. So don't come in expecting like a happy Bollywood fun time, alright? This ain't it. This ain't right? This is really dark, really fucked up. Even though it does slap, the music in this does slap, this is a horror, straight up and down. The only real negative to this movie is there is a tiny bit of janky CGI around the creature. Most of it was made with practical effects, but when the creature moves up a wall, they had to do CGI, obviously, because people can't climb up fucking walls, and they had a micro budget. It doesn't take away from the film at all. It is not lazy filmmaking. This man, the director, had to he waited till the time of the year and the correct weather conditions to shoot, so he had the perfect light and rain. He is not a lazy director. He is not leaning on CGI like a lot of Western cinema does. He had to use it because it was necessary. It was the only way to make the creature work. It also doesn't take away from the film. In fact, it makes it a little bit unsettling, to be honest. Tumbad is one of my favorite folk horrors of all time. It's pretty accessible. I believe it's still on YouTube. Get your fucking hands on it. It is so, so, so good. I love Tumbad. It's just, what a brilliant folk horror film. It's just, mwah. My next recommendation is a Senegalese crime horror. Why are you still watching that? That should be the selling point. That's it. You should be watching this right now. Okay, you need more convincing. That's fine, but that's a hell of a setup. This movie follows a trio of badass mercenaries called Bangui's Hyenas. That's Bangui's Hyenas. That is the coolest name for a mercenary group of all time. If you're planning to start your own mercenary group, fucking fold that shit right now, because you're never going to find a better name than Bangui's Hyenas. It's the coolest name ever. God damn it, it's the coolest name ever. Anyway, the Hyenas have been tasked with extracting a Mexican drug lord from Guinea-Bissau during the 2003 coup and taking him to Dakar. Yeah, it's fucking the extraction of a Mexican drug lord. The setup is almost as cool as the name Bangui's Hyenas. Due to fuel issues, the hyenas are forced to land in a remote and mystical part of Senegal called Saloum, where everything is not as it seems. Now, I am Ruth Langmore when it comes to West African politics and law. I don't know shit about fuck. But it was so refreshing to see a movie where the setting was so alien to me that I brought in all the way. I'm 100% into this film. I also like that the director, a Congolese man, I believe, Jean-Luc Herblot, I'm so sorry, my French is terrible, he doesn't try to explain too much to the Western audiences either. He's like, bro, you got Google, you sort it out, which is awesome. Don't pander to us. We need to do the work. It's awesome. It's very refreshing. They don't just dump exposition on you like a lot of films tend to do. Now, this movie is two very distinct parts, and there's a really tense scene that marks the transition to the two different genres that this film is. And it's just outstanding. It's a conversation around a dinner table, and if you know me, I love dinner party horror. Hit me up with dinner party horror. I love it. Herblot is obviously, he's a fan of 90s action and horror, and the only viewing experience that comes close to describing how I felt watching this film is probably Tarantino's From Dusk Till Dawn. Like, it is one movie that transitions into another. It also gave me it gave me Western or samurai movie vibes, which I just love. I love that genre. And it was filmed on a micro budget. So the only real letdown is there's a little bit of janky CI, but Herb Lowe knows that. Like he doesn't spend too much time on it. He doesn't. It doesn't take away from the film at all. It's just due to budget. He put this little effect in. It's fine, honestly. It's such a good movie. Do not let that stop you from watching this movie. Now I get to talk about my favorite part of the film, the hyenas themselves. They are the strongest part of this film. I loved them. I love the hyenas. Chaka, Rafa, and Papa Minuit are the coolest muscled mercs to set foot on screen since Predator 1. And like the OG Predator crew, I was so invested in every single one of them. They are so much more than generic dumb meatheads that are often shoehorned into action films and horror films. They all have their own distinct personalities. They love each other. You feel like they are brothers in arms. Also, the style of these guys, 12 out of 10. Like, you can point to a character that has more style than these guys. I fucking doubt it. It is Gucci boots. It is blonde mohawks and dreadlocks. Combat vests. They've got more jewelry than Wallace Bishop. They're just amazing. They're just a bunch of jacked army buddies getting shit done. There is a scene where Rafa is standing by himself in a bar, shirtless. He's got a machete resting over his shoulder, and he's like swigging from a Jack Daniels bottle straight. And my testosterone level spiked just from watching it. This movie has guns, gold, and biceps. Like, what more? What more do I need to sell you on for this film? See this film. Every single actor in this film, it has an amazing performance. And the three leads, Jan Gael, Roger Salah, and Mentor Bar. I'm sorry for the pronunciations. I'm trying really hard. But I want to see them in everything. They better be in more films in the future. Their talents, they're too good to be restricted to indie genre films. Action stars. You can make action stars out of these guys. I believe it. There are a few people that I believe in action roles. These guys can do it. Get around them. Fuck me. Put them in everything. I would love to see it. Even if you're not going to watch this movie, just look at the trailer. God, these guys are they're amazing. They're so stylish and they're so charismatic, and they could carry lead action. They can be the lead in action horrors, action movies in general. Please, please, please put them in. As I sat there on my couch watching this movie, inhaling peanut M&M after peanut M&M, I watched the hyenas drive around the desert just spewing lead, being dreamboats. I knew one thing for sure, and that is that the Bangui hyenas are the coolest fucking characters in all of horror. They rule. They rule. So please, please, please see Salom. It is such a good film. God damn it, is it a good film. I think Joel Edgerton is Australia's best actor. Yeah, I said it. He's an amazing warrior. He's phenomenal in The Gift. I think this is his best role, though. It's 2022's Netflix crime horror, The Stranger. I've seen a lot of people say, this isn't a horror online. Respectfully, you're wrong. This is about one of the most disturbing and darkest movies I've ever seen based on a true story. Like, Australia does true crime pretty well. This is one of the best ones. The film follows two men, Henry Teague, played by Sean Harris, and Mark Frame, played by Joel Edgerton. Henry is like this worn-out labourer who is down on his luck, and Mark is a sergeant-at-arms at like a low-level crim organisation in Western Australia. When Henry assists an associate of Mark, he basically extends an offer to Henry, hey, come work for us, come do some low-level crim work. Now, the mini spoiler, this is in the trailer and everything, but the mini spoiler is, so if you don't want to know anything, stop now. The mini spoiler is, Mark is actually a police officer who's trying to get close to Henry and get him to divulge information about a really famous case from Henry's past. When I was watching this film, I quickly pieced together that this movie is based on the police operation around the Daniel Morecambe case. At this point, if you're an Aussie, you pretty much know if you're going to watch this movie or not. I've seen a number of overseas reviewers say that this movie is boring because the stakes are low, because it's about a case that's already been solved, like the murder's already happened. I I cannot stress this enough. The Daniel Morcombe case is one of the biggest and most covered cases in Australian history. It shattered an entire nation. I was 10 when it happened. I live about an hour, less than, from where Daniel was abducted. It is a truly heartbreaking case, and it means so much to Australians. It shattered the entire nation. It is just a horrific, horrific case. So the stakes are very high, especially if you're Aussie. Um, it's about as high as they get in terms of like catching the killer. Now, true crime is tricky to do because if done poorly, it can seem really like creepy and exploitative. If done well, it becomes a touchstone for a lot of people's knowledge on a case. Thankfully, writer director Tom Wright knocked it out of the park. He made an absolute masterpiece with this. The movie's bleak, it's disturbing, and it's tense in a good way. How Joel Edgerton and Sean Harris did not win any awards for their roles in this film is fucking crazy, considering that they spend 99% of the screen time. It's just them two talking for like 99% of the screen time. They, I was captivated watching this. Sean Harris is so good. I did not know it was him. I was like, who is this Australian actor who's in this film and why haven't I seen him in more things? It's because he's not Australian. He's British. And he's in a lot of other British movies. His Australian accent was so good, I thought he was Australian. It is the best Australian accent I think I've seen from a non-Australian. It's so good. So congratulations, Sean, on the accent. It's amazing. I'm sorry you've been criminally overlooked. Sean is also in Possum, which is another really disturbing horror film. So, Sean, I love your work. Keep doing these really fucked up, weird films that creep me out. I hope you're okay mentally from doing all these films. Go see Possum if you haven't. It's creepy. It's got the worst puppet of all time in it. But I loved him in this. This film reeks of despair. And while the cinematography is beautiful, it is beautiful in the way that the Australian outback is. I don't know if you've ever been to the outback, but there's not a lot of bright colours. There's a lot of reds, a lot of browns. It suits the grimy nature of it, of the cinematography in this, suits the tone of the film perfectly. Basically, the whole premise of this film is how do you befriend a monster and stay sane, right? The whole film is that feeling bottled up and drip fed to you for 2 hours. It is also the most realistic portrayal of Australian criminals I have ever seen outside of real life, growing up in Logan. It's right up there with Snowtown, and it's right up there with Animal Kingdom, not the TV show, the movie. It pulls you through conversation after conversation of awkwardness as Mark tries to balance his friendship with, or befriending Henry, with keeping him at a distance. Like, there's a lot of rejection that goes on. There's a lot of really weird socially anxious scenes. If you have the fortitude to watch that, I highly recommend it. This movie stayed with me for weeks after I watched it. If you have absolutely zero interest in watching this film, please just go YouTube, The Stranger dance scene. It gives you a fraction of what the uneasiness the film thrusts upon you, but it's such a good scene, and you can see how good Sean Harris is in that scene. Once again, The Stranger, not The Strangers. It is The Stranger. There's a bunch of movies. It's 2022. It's awesome. If you've seen it and you like true crime, out of all the picks on this list, this is probably the one to go in for. You know that line from Lord of the Rings where it's Bilbo says, "I feel thin, like sort of stretched, like butter scraped over too much bread." That is what the next film Caveat gave me. Like, my nervous system was fucking toast. And that is also one of the downsides of not watching trailers before you go into films. You have no idea what you're walking into. So, when I went into the debut film by Damien McCarthy, I had no idea of what was to come. It was billed as an Irish gothic horror, and it is Irish, it is gothic, and it is full of horror. But it is also really tense and anxiety-riddling. The premise is a weird one. Isaac, played by Jonathan French, has trauma-inflicted memory loss. He's desperate for cash, so he's paid by his friend to look after his psychologically troubled niece Olga, who lives on her own on an isolated house on an island for a week. When he gets there, he finds that there are a few caveats to the deal. The main one being that he has to wear like this leather harness that's connected to a dog run because Olga's scared of people. So the leather harness doesn't allow him to leave the house. It doesn't allow him to go into Olga's room. And only Olga has the key. So once you're in there for a week. Now, yes, the scenario has more red flags than Russia in 1917, but you have to suspend disbelief just a little bit to go on this ride, just to get you past, like, I don't know if I'd do that. I know, but this guy's in a different, he's got a bit of brain trauma. You have to suspend disbelief a little bit to go on this ride, but I'm telling you, it's worth it. In terms of atmospheric horror, this movie has it in spades. It riddled me with anxiety the whole time. It is a short film, thank the powers that be, because the claustrophobia in this film is almost too much to take. Like, this movie slithers around this house that it makes a trap house look like a $1 million Tuscan villa. About half this film is set completely in the dark, with only Isaac's torchlight to illuminate. There are slow pans, there are music crescendos, there are mirror shots. They're all used perfectly to build suspense. If you are horror hardened, you've seen Sinister, you've seen all the big ones, you've seen Hereditary, chuck this on and set your nervous system to DEFCON 1. Because it's a tough watch, but it's fucking good. It's got one of the last scenes. It's got one of the creepiest smiles I've ever seen in my life. It really stuck with me. It also debuts what I think is the creepiest toy used in any horror film of all time. That is the dog-eared rabbit. Look at this fucking thing. If the Seventh Circle of Hell had a Build-A-Bear workshop, this sort of shit would come out of it. It looks like a gift someone would give to the Antichrist at their christening. I would rather go to a dinner party at Hannibal Lecter's where members of Jonestown were serving the drinks, and John Wayne Gacy's clown routine was the after-dinner entertainment, than be locked in a room with this thing for 5 fucking minutes. If I came home from work and this thing was in my house, I would immediately abandon my wife and kids, and I would go to the Vatican and I'd become a nun. This thing is spooky as shit. The best thing about this thing in this movie is it's a good guy. This thing's whole job is to detect when something spooky happens and knock out a little 2/4 rhythm on its creepy little drumsticks. It's a really disturbing artifact. And he obviously loved it. Damien McCarthy's got a new film. I haven't seen it yet. It's come out this year recently. It's called Oddity, and it also has this weird mannequin statue in it. So the dude he knows how to make creepy horror artifacts. Fucking hit the road, Annabelle. Kick rocks, Chucky. There's a new best spooky toy in town, and we hail the dog-eared rabbit. My next recommendation for a film. This is the scariest film on the list. It's the Argentinian film Terrified. Not Terrifier, not without the clown, Terrified. A lot of people probably haven't seen this because they're like, I don't like reading subtitles, I'll skip it. If it is any consolation and if it gets you into the movie, please know there is not a lot of dialogue in this, and most of the scares come from sound design and creature design. So you can pull this off. Like I said, there is a lot of scares in this film. I like haunted house movies, so I thought this movie would be right up my alley, and it does not disappoint. This movie takes haunted houses to a new level because the premise is basically a haunted neighborhood. Not one house, but 3. It's like a haunted street. After some truly bizarre and disturbing events transpire in a neighborhood in Buenos Aires, a team of paranormal investigators and one disgruntled cop decide to spend the night alone in each of the 3 houses to try and capture as much evidence of spookiness as they can. The 2 things I really like about this film is the fact that it used paranormal scientists as the main characters. There are a number of really creepy scenes in this film, and usually when they happen, the scientists aren't scared. They're excited because they're getting good data, and as a former scientist myself, former microbiologist, I was a laboratory scientist. That is 100% what scientists would do. It just shows you how obsession overrides your innate brain's response. It's one of the best times I've ever seen that on film. Another thing this movie does so well is the monster designs. The entities in this film are fucking downright terrifying. I haven't been this creeped out since The Thing, John Carpenter's The Thing, or is it Kayako from The Grudge? The designers outdid themselves, 12 out of 10. Fantastic, fantastic monster design. Now, the film does get muddied a little bit in the third act, but it is all the way through Creep Out Central. If you like stuff like Paranormal Activity, Sinister, The Grudge, The Ring, and you're like, God, I haven't been scared in ages. I just want something to scare me. Terrified will scare you. Terrified is so good. The director, Damien Rugner, went on to make When Evil Lurks, which was my number one film of last year. Another really disturbing and scary film. This is, if you are looking for scares, this is the scariest film on this list. It is so fucking scary. I loved it. It's one of the scariest films I've ever seen. Go see Terrified. Not Terrified without the clown. Terrified. It is so good. It's Argentinian. It's amazing. That's it. That's the list. All 13. If you have seen all of these, let me know in the comments so I can find my new best friend. Because that's fucking... What an effort. If you've seen any of these movies, let me know. Recommend your own. Recommend your own hidden horror gems from your own country in the comments. I want people to come back, save this video, and come back to it to be like, what should I watch? Comment section. Recommendation. That's what I would like. So, please, 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 if you love one of these films and you're like, fuck, people should watch this film, you know, send them. Say, hey, from minute 7 to minute 9, you should watch that film. Share this video. I want this to be people's like touch point of trying to find hidden horror gems. I think there's like 10 different countries we covered too. So they're not all Western films. They're not all Indian films. They're not all Argentinian films. They're from everywhere. They're from all over the globe. I fucking love horror, and finding these gems makes this job so goddamn good. It's one of my favorite bits. So if you've liked this at all, share it, like it, subscribe, do all that usual shit. But just fucking tell people. Tell people, if you love any of these films, tell people about them. I'm trying to get these films in front of people. I want these films to have cult status going forward. I just love them because I love them. I love these films. If you have any ideas for lists that I should do, I don't really do lists usually, but if you like this, I'll do them. Let me know. Let me know what lists you would like to see. As always, thanks for watching, and I hope to see you again for another review. Peace.